The unforgettable clash between Kimmi Scott and LaTisha. On the surface, it looked like Kimmi's sudden eruption came out of nowhere, a single sharp exchange during what was supposed to be a lighthearted moment. But if you've followed reality television long enough, you know the truth. Nothing ever happens in isolation. What looks like a sudden spark is often the result of months of hidden tension, small misunderstandings, private conversations, and subtle digs that viewers never fully see. In this video, we're going to take you behind the curtain. We'll explore how Kimmi and LaTisha's friendship went from laughs and support to distrust and confrontation, how the cameras caught a breaking point that couldn't be ignored, and how that one moment sent shockwaves through the cast, the fan base, and the careers of both women long after filming ended. This isn't just about a fight. It's about how reality TV magnifies real human emotion, forces people into impossible positions, and turns private tension into public spectacle. When the season first began filming, viewers were immediately drawn to Kimmi and LaTisha's interactions. On camera, they seemed like women who truly had each other's backs. They laughed easily, shared lighthearted moments during downtime, and stood side by side during the minor conflicts that are a staple of every reality show. To fans, it looked like the start of a genuine bond, the kind of connection that might survive the ups and downs of reality TV fame. For Kimmi especially, who had always been portrayed as confident, grounded, and steady, this was a chance to let her guard down with someone she could trust. LaTisha, meanwhile, seemed to find comfort in Kimmi's direct personality, someone who would always say exactly what she meant. The energy between them felt easy, it felt natural, and for a while, everything looked good on camera. But even in those early days, cracks were beginning to form. Cracks that the casual viewer may not have noticed, but that Kimmi picked up on right away. Reality television has a way of magnifying the smallest of things, and that's exactly what happened here. It wasn't one big betrayal that suddenly shattered the friendship. It was tiny moments that didn't feel like much at the time. A comment that rubbed the wrong way. A decision that felt dismissive. A sideways glance that seemed out of place in the middle of a serious conversation. For most people, those things would have passed by unnoticed. But Kimmi isn't most people. She has a sharp memory and a keen eye for detail. She doesn't just brush off uncomfortable moments. She remembers them, turns them over in her mind, and considers what they might mean. At first, these cracks weren't enough to create an open fight, but they were enough to chip away at the foundation of trust. LaTisha may not have realized it at the time, but each of those little moments was leaving a mark. And the longer they went unaddressed, the deeper the marks became. The real turning point came not during the dramatic scenes that made it to air, but in the quieter, unedited moments that happened when the cameras weren't rolling. Reality shows create an environment where private conversations are never entirely private. Cast members talk, things slip, and before long, everyone has an opinion about something that was supposed to stay between friends. LaTisha had a habit of sharing pieces of her conversations with Kimmi with other cast members. Maybe she didn't mean harm. Maybe it was just casual venting. But for Kimmi, it felt like a violation. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild, and every time she heard her words repeated by someone else, the fire inside her grew hotter. Add to this a series of subtle digs about her personal life, comments whispered at just the right time by just the right people, and the weight of unspoken tension became impossible to ignore. LaTisha might not have realized it, but her choices were building a wall between herself and Kimmi. A wall that eventually collapsed under its own pressure. Part of what made the tension between Kimmi and LaTisha so combustible was the fact that they communicated in completely different ways. Kimmi is direct, brutally honest, and unafraid to say what she thinks even if it ruffles feathers. She sees honesty as a sign of respect, a way to clear the air and move forward. LaTisha, on the other hand, is more cautious. She prefers indirect approaches, smoothing things over quietly rather than confronting them head-on. To her, this feels like a way to avoid unnecessary conflict. But to Kimmi, it felt like avoidance, like LaTisha wasn't willing to address problems openly. That difference in communication style meant that every small disagreement got magnified. What could have been resolved in a 5-minute conversation stretched into hours of quiet tension. Both women interpreted each other's behavior through the lens of months of unresolved frustration, and every new conflict felt heavier than the one before it. And then came the moment that changed everything. What was supposed to be a casual, light-hearted scene suddenly turned tense when LaTisha made a comment that seemed harmless on the surface. But to Kimmi, it wasn't harmless at all. It was the final straw in a long line of perceived slights, betrayals, and moments where she felt disrespected. Without hesitation, Kimmi's voice cut through the room. Calm, steady, but sharp enough to silence everyone around her, she said the words that had been building for months: "You crossed the line." In that instant, the atmosphere shifted. The room grew still. Cast members who moments earlier had been laughing and chatting froze in place, unsure whether to step in or stay quiet. LaTisha's face shifted from shock to defensiveness, her mind racing to respond, but her words stumbling over themselves. What viewers witnessed wasn't just an argument. It was the eruption of months of pressure, the release of everything Kimmi had held back. And because it was real, raw, and unscripted, no one could look away. The tension in that room was almost physical. Kimmi's delivery wasn't just about the present moment. Every pause, every controlled movement carried the weight of months of frustration. This wasn't acting. This wasn't a storyline crafted by producers. This was real human emotions spilling over in front of cameras that were ready to capture every second. Even the calmest cast members could feel it. The dynamic in the room shifted instantly. People who had been neutral suddenly found themselves reconsidering their alliances. Some wanted to step in and mediate. Others chose to sit back and simply witness the storm unfold. Every laugh, every glance, every small gesture carried new weight. The walls felt like they were closing in, amplifying the fight until the environment itself seemed to vibrate with tension. And of course, once the footage made its way to the screen, the drama didn't stay contained within that room for long. As soon as the episode aired, fans took to social media in droves. Twitter threads lit up, Instagram stories multiplied. TikTok edits broke down the fight frame by frame. Viewers dissected Kimmi's tone, LaTisha's body language, and the silent reactions of every cast member in the room. Hashtags trended within hours. Entire communities of fans split into camps. Team Kimmi versus Team LaTisha. To some, Kimmi was a hero, a woman who had finally reached her breaking point and stood up for herself in the most honest way possible. To others, her reaction felt too strong, too heavy for the moment at hand. LaTisha, meanwhile, was either cast as the victim of months of built-up anger or the cause of the entire situation. There was no middle ground. The fight became more than a scene on television. It became a cultural moment, amplified and remixed across platforms until it took on a life of its own. While fans debated online, both women had to live with the very real consequences of the confrontation. For Kimmi, the moment cemented her reputation as someone who would not tolerate disrespect. That reputation brought admiration and support, but it also brought pressure. Every public appearance, every interview, every social media post was scrutinized for signs of strength, defiance, or vulnerability. She had to live up to the image of being fearless and unshakable, even when the weight of constant attention felt overwhelming. LaTisha, on the other hand, found herself in unfamiliar territory. She hadn't expected the backlash to be so strong or so widespread. Friends and fellow cast members became cautious, unsure of where loyalty stood. Online, every post she made was read as a clapback, a defense, or a coded message. The small comment she had once brushed off as insignificant had turned into a defining moment that altered how people saw her character, her intentions, and even her integrity. The impact of the fight went far beyond social media debates. Both Kimmi and LaTisha had to adjust the way they navigated their professional lives. Kimmi's boldness and clarity became assets, making her appealing to brands and opportunities that valued authenticity and strength. She leaned into her reputation, turning what could have been seen as a negative into a defining part of her public image. LaTisha, meanwhile, had a more delicate path to walk. She had to rebuild trust, not just with her castmates but with viewers. She needed to show that she could be vulnerable and authentic without fueling further drama. Every interview became part of a strategy to reshape her image. Every social media post was crafted carefully to show balance, sincerity, and growth. For both women, one moment of reality TV had shifted the trajectory of their careers in ways they could never have anticipated. What makes this story so powerful isn't just the fight itself, but the lessons that came out of it. For Kimmi, it was a reminder of how important it is to set boundaries early, to speak up before small frustrations turn into insurmountable anger. For LaTisha, it was a hard lesson in how even small actions can snowball into major consequences when they're filtered through the lens of public perception. Both women had to reckon with the fact that reality TV isn't just entertainment. It's a live experiment in human behavior under pressure. It forces people to confront their own flaws, their own communication styles, and their own breaking points while millions of viewers watch, analyze, and judge. In the end, the clash between Kimmi and LaTisha became more than just a scene. It became a defining moment in the season. A turning point that shifted alliances, reshaped reputations, and left fans buzzing long after the cameras stopped rolling. It showed that the most powerful moments in reality TV aren't scripted. They're born out of real emotion, raw conflict, and the universal human struggle to be understood, respected, and heard. Whether you stand with Kimmi, LaTisha, or somewhere in between, one thing is clear: this fight will go down as one of the most unforgettable moments in love and Marathon-style history.